Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala nabi al-kareem, wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajma'in, amma ba'd, fa inna astaqal hadithi kitabullah, wa khayru hadi Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, wa sharral umuri muhdathatuha, wa kullu muhdathatin bid'a, wa kullu bid'atin dalala, wa kullu dalalatin finnar. Problem that we're noticing amongst the younger generation is that a lot of people in the younger generation have become very self-centered. Right? This is the problem that we have today. There are a lot of people have become very self-centered. That life has become all about the self. It's all about me. It's all about what I want, my rights, my needs. And in the pursuit of the self, we tend to forget the needs of others. And we see this in every aspect of society. So for example, a very basic example, volunteering. You will notice that it's much harder to get the younger generation to volunteer compared to previous generations, right? It's very hard to find volunteers today. Why? Everyone's always in there for what's in it for me? What am I getting out of this? I could be playing video games, I could be watching Netflix, why should I volunteer? Life has become all about the self. And I want to discuss today one of the ideologies that is causing people to become more self-centered. And this ideology is one that it's not spoken about. It's more of a subconscious ideology. Like it's there. It exists on a government level. It exists on a cultural level. But people don't talk about it. Like the other ideologies we discussed, people talk about it and they attribute it to themselves. But this one is something that goes unsaid. And that is the ideology of individualism, about focus on the self. Now, historically, modern society has been divided into two types of cultures. On the East, we have the collectivist cultures, where it's all about the state, or it's all about the family. And in the West, we have the individualistic cultures, where it's all about the self. What's the difference between these two cultures? You'll find that, for example, in a culture where it's all about the state, people are expected to just do whatever the government wants. So they will tell you what your job is, they will work you to death, and they don't care about you. It's all about the state. In a culture where it's all about the family, you'll have to do whatever your family says. To such an extent, in such a culture, a man has to marry the woman his parents want him to marry. Right? He has to work the job his parents want him to work. He has no say in his own life. On the other end, we have the individualistic cultures, where it's all about the self. My work, my rights, my life, my choices, my freedom. Where do you think Islam stands on this divide? Keep in mind, the answer is something I've said over and over again for many other questions. Where do you think Islam stands on this divide? On one hand, we have countries which are run in a collectivist manner, where it's all about the state or the family. And then we have other countries which are on the individual, where it's all about my freedom and my rights. Right? Where do you think Islam stands? Remember I said, whenever there's two extremes, Islam is always in the middle. Islam is always in the middle. In Islam, there is a sense of the self. There is a sense of the nafs, of the self. No one is responsible for somebody else's sins. Right? La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha. Allah only holds you accountable for what you are capable of. Right? So there is a sense of the self. You have to take care of your own spirituality. Be accountable for your own sins. Do your own good deeds. Work your own way to paradise. You have to work hard. You have to earn an income. You are responsible for your own wealth. You have to take care of your own health. All of this is there in Islam, but it's balanced out. There is also a sense of ummah. There is also a responsibility towards the family. There is also a sense of maintaining family ties. There's also responsibility towards the neighbors. There's also responsibilities towards the poor, towards the orphans. There's also a general responsibility for caring about others. So what Islam does is it saves humanity from these extremes. That we have on one side of the world an extreme where you have no sense of self. You are just a cog in the wheel, you just do what you are told. And on the other extreme, we have this where it's all about the self. It's all about me. It's all about what I want. And nothing else matters. Now, one of the problems that's happening over the past 20 years is that this sense of individualism in the West has become extreme. It has become what we call hyper-individualism. So the way it existed 50 years ago was fine. It was actually in line with Islam, right? Like 50 years ago, where the West was saying that you need to work hard, you need to earn your own income, you need to take responsibility for your life, all of this was fine. But what's happened over the past 50 years? A few things happened over the past 20 years. One of them is the rise of social media, right? So what happened with the rise of social media? Social media today is all about yourself. It's all about self-praise. It's all about fame. It's all about, who has the most followers and the most likes. And what this does, it made people more self-centered, right? Social media, as it exists today, has made a lot of youngsters more self-centered, where life becomes all about the self. Nothing else matters. People will be willing to embarrass their own parents on social media just to get famous, where the parents don't even have, any sense of rights, because it's all about the self. So that's one of the things that happened. Another thing that happened over the past 20 years is that we had a divide in families, right? The family structure broke down. This is what has happened. The family structure broke down, and a lot of people don't have a sense of family anymore. And then they become even more individualistic. So you have people out there who don't want to get married, don't want to have children, don't want anything to do with their parents, don't talk to their brothers and sisters, don't have any sense of family whatsoever, right? And they feel that that's the right thing to do. Why? Because I want to have fun, I want to enjoy my life, I want to do things my way, right? It's all about me. It becomes all about the self. So with the breakdown of the family has led people to becoming even more individualistic, where life becomes all about the self. And it's become so extreme that we are hearing statements today that you would have never ever heard 20 years ago. Like today I hear young people saying things like, I don't owe my parents anything. They just did what they had to do. Every parent has to do that, so I don't owe them anything. This is such a satanic statement to make. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, once a man was making tawaf while carrying his mother on his back. And he walked up to Abdullah ibn Umar and said, does this act of worship make up for all the stuff she did for me when I was younger? And Abdullah ibn Umar said, it does not even make up for one contraction. It does not even make up for one bit of pain that she felt during labor. To think that your parents have no rights over you, this is a level of being self-centered that is beyond delusion. This is like reaching satanic levels of self-centeredness, where even the very people who gave you everything, who helped you to get where you are today, you're going to throw them away? And now we have children kicking their parents out of their home and leaving their parents homeless so they can rent out that house because they want more money? Like, what kind of a devilish mentality is this? That shaitan has caught out people this much, that we have these happening in our community, in South Africa, in Durban, amongst Muslims, where people have become so self-centered that they have zero feelings towards their own parents. And one of the things that's contributed to this is this modern myth of independence, right? The modern myth of independence. One of the lies that this generation has been sold is that you need to be independent. Reality is, Allah is Al-Ghani. Allah is independent. Nobody else is independent. Nobody in this world is independent. You can be the best alim in the world, but if you are sick, you still need a doctor. You can be the best doctor in the world. You need to pay your taxes, you need an accountant. Everybody needs everybody else for society to function. Nobody is independent. We are all interdependent, right? And that's how society functions. It functions through interdependence. A man needs his wife, a woman needs a husband. Parents need their children, children need their parents. Brothers and sisters need each other. Neighbors need each other. Communities need each other. But when people start thinking only about themselves, only about independence, where it becomes all about me, then they lose that they lose that sense of caring about others. Then life becomes only about how can I do things on my own. And then you get this self-delusion that, oh, I'm a self-made man. You hear this today. I'm a self-made man. Someone born into a rich home, sent to the fanciest of school by his parents, given the best of education, given his first job by a contact in the family, will say, I'm a self-made man. Nobody's a self-made man. We're all part of a community. The community uplifts each other. But if you can't see the good that others are doing for you, then you're not a self-made man. You have broken yourself. You have broken yourself. And what's going to happen? What's going to happen with the generation that is so self-centered? A few things are going to happen. Number one, family is going to disappear even more. Family is going to disappear. And we're seeing this, that we now have youngsters who intend to never ever get married. We have young men and women who actually have the intention to never get married, to never have children. And by the way, if you are in that category, look at what's happening in America and in Europe. Their populations are in decline. You don't believe me? Go and research the stats yourself. They are in population decline. Certain races are in danger of becoming extinct because they have an entire generation that's not getting married and having children. Right? Think about this. If an entire generation of a family does not get married, does not have children, that family is extinct by the next generation. They don't exist anymore. So we have this idea that nowadays with some people, when you ask them, I speak to them, ask them, like, why don't you want to get married? It's natural to want to get married. It's natural to want to have children. They say, I want to enjoy my life. How are you going to enjoy your life without family? That's the biggest joy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Al-malu wal-banuna zinatul hayati dunya. Wealth and children are the beauty of this world. You want wealth and not children, you're only getting half the package. Right? The beauty and the joy of this world comes from family. So people saying they want to enjoy themselves, what they mean is they want to do everything haram without someone telling them no. So they'll move out to their parents' house, have nothing to do with their parents, won't get married because they don't want the spouse telling them what you're doing is haram. They don't want to have children because they don't have to be a role model to those children. They just want to stay in a state of rebellious teenager for the rest of their life. We have many men in their 30s who are still rebellious teenagers. They don't want to get married, they don't want to work, they don't want to be a role model to others, they just want to have fun. This is individualism gone to an extreme. So this is the problem that our culture faces today. And it's very, very bad. And what's happened over the past 2 years is because of the lockdown, because we all were stuck in our own houses for 2 years, people who already had this mindset where it's all about me, it became even worse. Because now they had zero interaction with other people. Some of them had literally zero interaction with other people for 2 years. And now they don't even know how to interact with other people. That you will find that we now have people who don't even know how to be polite. They don't even know how to have good manners. They don't have a sense of feeling for others. Life has become all about the self. So to go back to what I was saying in the beginning, that modern cultures are of two types. In the East, we have a lot of collectivist cultures where it's all about the state or all about the family. And in the West, we have individualistic cultures. This includes South Africa, where it's all about the self. And we said Islam is in the middle. You take care of yourself, take care of your health, take care of your wealth, take care of your spirituality, take care of your personal development. You take care of yourself, but you also take care of family. You also care about your neighbors. You also care about society. You care about the poor. You care about the orphans. You care about the ummah. You find a balance between both. You find a way to be part of the whole and to be yourself at the same time. Because at the end of the day, it's all about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He made us individuals, but He made us part of an ummah. And we have to find that balance between caring for ourselves, the individuals, and caring for the ummah. Let me give you one last example of how people go to extremes in this. Here's an example of doing it the right way, right? If a woman tells a husband that I need an hour to myself every day because I need me time, or if a man tells his wife that, this is balanced. This is the right way to get me time, to focus on yourself, to be individualistic in a balanced way. Now, we have cases where a woman who's in a perfectly happy marriage will say, I want a divorce. And we ask why? Say, I want to focus on myself. This is I want to focus on myself. I want to be me. I don't want to have to worry about the husband and children anymore. This is now going to an extreme, where you and yourself and your nafs is so important, you will break up your family for the sake of self. An hour to the self a day, balanced. Breaking up an entire family because you only care about yourself, extreme. And beware, this is on the rise. This is on the rise today, where people aren't divorcing because of, we understand when people divorce because of abuse or because of negligence or because of something like that. But where people are now divorcing because I want to focus on myself, or I want to do self-love. That's the new word they're using, self-love. So you love yourself more than your family. You're willing to split children up from their father because you care about yourself more. This is now becoming extreme. And we have to be very careful of these extremes. At the end of the day, Islam is a religion of balance. Find time for yourself. Find time for others. You go back to the wisdom of Salman al-Farsi. When he met Abu Darda, radiallahu anhu, and he knows that Abu Darda was only focusing on worshipping Allah and on nothing else. What did he tell Abu Darda? He told him, your Lord has rights over you, but your wife has rights over you, and your body has rights over you. So give everyone their rights. Give everyone their rights. Give Allah His rights. Give your family their rights. Give society their rights. Give yourself your rights. Everyone has rights, including your own self. So you find that balance where you take care of yourself, you take care of family, you take care of society, and you worship Allah. That is the straight path. And if someone is becoming too self-centered, they have to really rethink how they are looking at life, because the end of that road of being self-centered is not independence, it's loneliness. It's loneliness. That one day, as a young man, 25, you think, oh, I'm going to be independent, no wife, no kids, no parents, no friends, just me on my own. By the age of 70 or 80, you're going to be crying out of loneliness. Because what that decision when you are young means, it means when you are old, you have no children, no grandchildren, nobody in your life. And I know people who made that choice and they died in a state where nobody knew they were dead until a smell came out of their house a few days later, because they literally don't interact with any other people. They just completely isolated themselves from society. Be careful of the loneliness that comes from divorcing yourself from the ummah. We are a part of the ummah, and we must make that a part of our lives. We ask Allah for guidance, we ask Allah for balance, we ask Allah to keep us in the middle path, in the straight path. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salam ala mursaleen, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Alhamdulillahi wahda, wassalatu wassalamu ala man la nabiyya ba'da, amma ba'd. So how do we find balance? How do we bring our youth back to the middle path? I'll just mention 4 things very quickly. Number 1, model the behavior and attitude that you want your children to have. If a mother or a father is self-centered, the children are going to be self-centered. But if they see in their parents models of kindness, of community, of service, of loving for others what they love for themselves, of being part of an ummah, then that's what they're going to replicate. That if they see their mother and father volunteering, and they're taking part in Islamic events, and helping the poor, and helping their neighbors, and being there for their relatives, then that is what they're going to model. That's what the children are going to do. But if the parents are self-centered, if the parents only care about themselves, if the parents are always focused on just me, myself, and I, then you're going to raise a child who is the same. So it starts, number 1, by modeling the behavior that you want the next generation to have. Number 2, make sure that your children are connecting with others. And one of the problems of this generation is everyone's being raised in isolation. That children are just sitting and playing video games and watching Netflix all day. And the only interactions they have with others is through social media, which is a very toxic environment to be interacting with others. Take your children to socialize. Take them with you to volunteer at events. Right? Take them to visit extended family. Invite extended family over. Let them spend time with cousins. Let them spend time with the broader family. Let them get to know their neighbors and the neighbors' children. Take them to the masjid. Introduce them to people at the masjid. Let them see the masjid as a place of socializing, a place of community. That they know all of the uncles in the masjid, and they know all of the elders in the masjid, and they make connections in the masjid, and they gain their mentors from the masjid. And they gain the spiritual guides from the masjid, because it's a place of community for them. It's not just a place that they pop in once a week, listen to khutbah and go home. There needs to be a sense of community. But this starts with the parents, that the parents need to make sure that their children are part of the community. If you feel your child is being raised in isolation, make sure that you are helping them to form community bonds. Think about it. Think about your own kids and think about whether they have a sense of community or not. And if they don't, find ways. And it starts at least with the masjid. At least have a sense of connection to the people of knowledge and to the righteous people in your community, so that they grow up as a part of society. That they have elders in their community they can ask for advice to. They have people who could help them get a job one day. That they have people who can advise them spiritually on issues they might not want to talk to their parents about. That they have healthy role models around them, and not just the toxic people that they interact with online. Number 3, start volunteering and take your children with you. That if you are volunteering at an event, make your teenagers volunteer as well. Make them volunteer. I know nowadays we don't want to make people do anything. We feel like it's wrong to make children do anything, but it's a parent's job. It's a parent's job sometimes to make your child do something that they don't want to do because it's good for them in the long run. So if you are going to volunteer at an Islamic event, take your teenagers with you, whether they want to or not, and make them set up the chairs, make them do something, make them pour the tea, whatever it is, get them involved in serving people. so they can learn the joy of serving others, so they can learn that sense of community, that it's not all about me, that there's a greater joy in being part of a community and helping others and serving others and being part of society than just focusing on yourself. And maybe that will awaken something in them. Or maybe that will awaken in them this idea of being part of the community and helping others and serving others. But if they don't gain those experiences, they'll never know. All they know is the bubble that they grow up in. So take your children and make them part of the community by allowing them to volunteer or by making them volunteer. And finally, have honest discussions with your children about this topic. If you have a child who is very self-centered, sit them down and talk to them about what that's going to mean in the long run. Right? And if you can't do it, get an elder to do it, or get a scholar to do it, or get a counselor to do it, because that mindset is very destructive. People don't see long term, right? The teenagers and the youngsters who think like this, they don't see long term. All they can see is now. All they can see is the joy and that power that they get from being independent now. They don't see the long term consequences for them, for the family, and for the society if they're just pursuing their nafs in the short term. They need these discussions. You need to sit with them and be honest with them that this is not a good path to go down. That if you don't see your parents as having rights over you, then who will you see as having rights over you? Right? Someone who doesn't even feel that their parents have rights over them, do you think they're going to think that their wife or their husband has rights over them? Or that their children has rights over them? Or that their neighbors have rights over them? Or that the poor people of society have rights over them? No, because all they care about is themselves. They have divorced themselves from the most primary relationship, that bond with your parents. So every other bond falls apart as well. So you need to have honest conversations with them that this is a very dangerous path to go down. And beware of the signs that someone's becoming individualistic, hyper-individualistic, where they stop caring about others, where they only talk about their own rights, where they only talk about their own selves, where they don't have a sense of empathy for others, where the year of a flood in another country doesn't affect them. The year about poverty doesn't affect them. The year about people dying doesn't affect them. Why? Because it didn't happen to them. If someone is becoming like that, then they are heading down a dark path. And you have to have an honest conversation with them about being part of the ummah. That this ummah, we are one. And we are supposed to be there for each other. And we are supposed to be, the hadith says, like bricks supporting each other. A brick on its own is useless. A brick on its own is useless. And this is what we are becoming. That we are becoming a nation of 2 billion useless bricks instead of a house to protect our people from the outside forces. So we need to understand the importance of ummah and the importance of being there for each other and the importance of brotherhood in Islam. And it starts with the parents. It starts with making sure that your children are growing up with a sense of understanding that yes, you need to build up yourself, you need to focus on your personal development, your spirituality, your career, you need to focus on that, but you also need to focus on others. You also need to make time for your family, for your neighbors, for the orphans, for the poor, for the ummah as a whole. You need to be part of this ummah. Otherwise you will have a very lonely existence. We ask Allah for guidance, we ask Allah for balance, we ask Allah to keep us steadfast on the straight path. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.